You know what my sister-in-law told me at her 50th birthday party? She leaned in close, champagne breath warm on my cheek, and whispered, "Lorraine, I want you to know something. I've always admired how content you are with so little. 300 people in that ballroom." And I smiled. I smiled because I knew something she didn't. I knew that everything she had built her reputation on every award, every newspaper feature, every standing ovation belonged to me. But it would take her own daughter to tell the world. Let me take you back to where this really started. I married Harold Westbrook in the summer of 1989. A small ceremony at the courthouse, followed by cake at his parents' house. His mother cried happy tears into her handkerchief. His father shook my hand and told me I'd gotten myself a good man. His sister Vivian arrived 45 minutes late, wearing white. She apologized profusely in that way she had. Something about traffic. Something about a work emergency that couldn't wait. She hugged me, her perfume overwhelming, and said she was just so happy for us. I didn't know yet that this would become her signature move. Arriving late, making an entrance, ensuring all eyes turned her direction. Everything was a performance with Vivian. Even congratulations. Harold was the quiet one in his family, 2 years younger than Vivian, eternally in her shadow, where she collected degrees and connections and memberships in clubs with waiting lists. He collected a small accounting practice and a wife who worked as a home health aide. That would be me. I spent 23 years caring for elderly people in their homes, changing wound dressings, administering medications, monitoring blood pressure and blood sugar and all the numbers that keep people alive, sitting in quiet rooms while the afternoon light shifted across the walls, holding hands during the long hours when nobody else came. It wasn't glamorous work. The pay was modest. The benefits were worse. But I was good at it. I had a gift for being present, for listening without interrupting, for remembering the small things that made people feel seen. Mrs. Patterson liked her tea with 2 sugars and a splash of milk, and she could always tell if you'd done it wrong. Mr. Dominguez wanted to hear about the weather, the birds, anything outside his window that he couldn't see anymore. Della Washington needed someone to read the mystery novels her eyes couldn't manage anymore, and she preferred the voices done properly. I remembered all of it. Every preference, every story, every name of every grandchild, and every photograph on every dusty mantel. The Westbrook family made sure I never forgot my place. At our first Thanksgiving together, all of us crowded around the table at Harold's parents' house. Vivian asked what college I'd attended. Her voice carried that particular tone. Curious the way a scientist is curious about a specimen. When I said I'd gotten my certification through a vocational program, she tilted her head. She looked at me like I'd told her I'd been raised by wolves. "Well," she said, setting down her fork, "someone has to do that work, I suppose." Her husband, Martin, laughed. The sound was brief and dismissive, the kind of laugh that agreed without committing. Harold squeezed my hand under the table. His mother changed the subject to pie, but I learned to read a room that day. I learned that in the Westbrook universe, worth was measured in credentials and connections. And I had neither. For the first decade, I told myself it didn't matter. Harold loved me. We had our small house with the vegetable garden out back. Tomatoes every summer, red and heavy on the vine. Zucchini, whether we wanted it or not, always more than 2 people could eat. We had our Friday night dinners at the Italian place on the corner. Same booth, same waitress, same bottle of the house red split between us. Our Sunday morning crosswords in bed with coffee. Me with the across, him with the down. We had each other. But Vivian had a way of reminding me. Every Christmas, she'd give me something aggressively practical. A vacuum cleaner, still in the store packaging, with a bow stuck on top. A set of dish towels in colors I'd never choose, browns and beiges that belonged in a hospital. One year, a meat thermometer, as if she'd heard rumors I had difficulty with cooking. I still have that thermometer somewhere. I've never used it. Meanwhile, she'd present her daughter Miranda with jewelry from trips abroad. First edition books in leather bindings. Spa weekends at places that didn't advertise prices. The disparity was so precise, it almost seemed accidental. As if Vivian couldn't help herself, couldn't stop demonstrating the hierarchy, even when it would cost her nothing to be kind. I once joked to Harold that I should start a collection, frame all the cleaning supplies his sister had given me over the years, open a museum. He didn't laugh. He knew the year Miranda graduated from college, Vivian threw her a party that cost more than our car. Catered food, a live band, ice sculptures. Though it was June, I helped set up tables in the morning, my knees aching on the hardwood. I helped clean up afterwards, scraping food into garbage bags. Nobody thanked me. Nobody really noticed. The following week, when I finished my nursing certification renewal, 30 hours of continuing education, paid for out of my own pocket, studied for during late nights after work, nobody mentioned it. I told Harold, and he took me to dinner. That was enough, I told myself. That was enough. Life continued in its small, ordinary rhythms. I worked my shifts. I came home tired in the deepest parts of my bones. Harold and I grew older together the way people do. Gray appearing at temples, laugh lines becoming permanent fixtures, knees that predicted rain. And somewhere in there, I started doing something extra. It began with Della Washington. She was my last patient of the day, a standing appointment every afternoon at 3. 87 years old, sharp as the day she retired from teaching. No family to speak of. Her nephew called once a year, maybe twice if he remembered her birthday. Her former students had scattered to winds she couldn't follow. She lived alone in a small apartment full of books she could no longer read. After my shift ended, I'd stay and read to her. Just for an hour at first. Sometimes 2, if the story was good. She had these old paperback mysteries she'd collected over decades. We'd work through one a week, sometimes faster if the plot picked up. I did voices for all the characters. The detective got a deep, serious tone. The suspects got their own accents. The murderer always sounded slightly off, though I tried not to give it away too early. Della loved it. Her favorite moment was always the reveal, the unmasking, the moment when everything made sense. "You know what I love about mysteries?" she asked me once. "What's that?" "Someone always figures it out. Someone always sees the truth." She paused, her milky eyes aimed somewhere past my shoulder. "Real life isn't like that. People get away with things all the time. Terrible things. And nobody ever unmasks them." I thought about that for a long while after. When Della passed peacefully, in her sleep, the way she'd always wanted, I found myself at loose ends. The hour after work that used to be hers felt empty, like a room where someone used to sit. So I started visiting others, people I'd cared for professionally who'd been discharged, people in the senior center who had no regular visitors. I'd bring homemade cookies, magazines, a listening ear. Sometimes used myself, sometimes his presence. It wasn't a program. It wasn't organized. There was no board of directors, no mission statement, no logo. It was just me, showing up. Word spread quietly. The senior center started calling me when someone seemed lonely. Families reached out when they couldn't be there themselves. The social workers mentioned my name to people who needed someone. Before I knew it, I was spending 20 hours a week visiting elderly people who had no one else. I started keeping notes. A calendar full of names and addresses, little details in the margins, who was allergic to what, who liked crosswords, who needed their blood pressure checked, who had a birthday coming up, who had just lost a spouse, who needed to talk about the past, who needed to not talk at all. I took photographs, sometimes disposable cameras, nothing fancy. Birthday parties for 90-year-olds who hadn't had one in decades. Reading circles in living rooms with the shades drawn against the afternoon sun. Holiday dinners for people who would otherwise eat alone. I never told anyone except Harold. I didn't need credit. I needed purpose. Vivian found out by accident. She dropped by our house one Saturday unannounced, as was her custom. She never called ahead. Calling ahead would give people time to prepare. And Vivian preferred to catch people off guard. It gave her an advantage she didn't like to give up. Harold was out running errands. I was at the kitchen table updating my calendar. Names, addresses, notes about who liked what kind of tea. "What is this?" she asked, looking over my shoulder. Her perfume filled the kitchen, I explained. The visits, the photographs, the years of showing up. Her eyes lit up in a way I'd never seen. Something calculating behind the brightness. "Lorraine," she said, leaning forward, "this is exactly what I've been looking for." She'd been trying to establish herself in charitable circles, she explained. The women in her orbit all had causes. Cancer research, children's hospitals, symphony orchestras. They wore ribbons and attended galas and had their photos taken with important people. Vivian needed something distinctive, something that would make her stand out. Elder companionship, she said, testing the words. It's perfect, heartwarming, photogenic, underserved. She looked at me with something that might have been respect, or might have been calculation. It's hard to tell the difference with Vivian. I want to start a foundation. Something official. Would you help me get it started? I said yes. I'm not sure why. Maybe I thought it would bring more resources to the people I cared about. Maybe I thought it would finally earn me a place in her world. Maybe I was just tired of being invisible. Maybe I wanted to believe that people could change, that even Vivian might surprise me. The foundation launched in the spring of 1999. Vivian called it the Mercy Circle Foundation. She designed a logo, 2 hands clasped, very tasteful. She rented a small office space. She printed business cards with her name under the title of founder and president. I was listed nowhere. It's just easier this way, she explained. Donors want to see stability, continuity. They want to know who's in charge. But I've been doing this work for years. Exactly. And now I'll make sure it gets funded properly. She smiled. You're the engine, Lorraine. I'm the hood ornament. Every car needs both. At first, I didn't mind. Vivian handled the fundraising, the galas, the board meetings. She was good at it. She could work a room like nobody I'd ever seen. Could make anyone feel like the most important person in the world. Could convince people to write checks with extra zeros. I handled the actual visits. I kept doing what I'd always done, showing up, listening, caring. The difference was that now there was money. Money for supplies, for transportation, for the small things that made visits better. And the difference was that Vivian got the credit. I watched it happen slowly, then all at once. First, she started describing my visits in donor letters. She'd take my story's specific details, names, moments, and present them as her own experiences. I sat with Margaret last Tuesday. She'd write. She told me about her late husband, how they used to dance in their kitchen on Sunday mornings. She cried, and I held her hand, and I thought, this is why we do this work. I'd sat with Margaret. Margaret had told me about the dancing. Her husband, Walter, had swept her off her feet at their 35th anniversary, arthritis and all. They danced to some old song from their wedding. Margaret had cried in my arms. Vivian had never met Margaret. Vivian didn't know Margaret existed until I told her the story over dinner. When I mentioned this, she waved her hand. It's fundraising, Lorraine. People give money to faces they recognize. You understand. I didn't understand, but I kept visiting. Because the elderly people I saw didn't care whose name was on the letterhead. They cared that someone showed up. The foundation grew. 3 years in, Vivian had a board of directors, all society women, all connected, all friends from her tennis club and her book group. They met quarterly in Vivian's living room. I was never invited. It would be awkward, Vivian explained. You know how these women are. They're not comfortable around. Well, you understand. I understood. I understood perfectly. 5 years in, she had a staff of 2. A young woman to answer phones and manage the calendar. A part-time bookkeeper to track donations. Neither of them knew I existed. 7 years in, she was getting newspaper coverage. The first article called her an angel in pearls. It included a photograph of Vivian at someone's bedside. I recognized the bedside. It was Mrs. Kowalski's. I'd sat there every Wednesday for 3 years. Vivian had never met Mrs. Kowalski. The article quoted Vivian extensively about the loneliness epidemic among seniors, about how she'd made it her mission to ensure no one grew old alone. I remember the first person I visited, the article quoted her, a woman named Della. She taught me everything about what it means to truly listen. I put the newspaper down. I walked to the bathroom. I closed the door. And I cried in a way I hadn't cried in years. Because Della was mine. Della was the person who taught me about listening. And now Vivian was claiming even that. The awards followed the articles. Local magazines called her inspiring, a visionary in elder care, a woman who gave her time when she didn't have to. The mayor gave her an award at a fancy dinner. I was not invited to attend. She spoke at conferences about the importance of elder care. She spoke with authority, with passion, with tears in her eyes. She spoke about visits she'd never made to people she'd never met. And I watched it all. At family gatherings, Vivian would hold court about her charitable work. The foundation is expanding, she'd announce. We've touched over 1,000 lives, over 1,000 elderly people who now have companionship. I'd touched those lives. I'd held those hands. I'd learned the names of their grandchildren and their childhood pets and their first loves. Vivian had touched a checkbook. One Thanksgiving, she announced she'd been invited to speak at a national conference. They want me to share the Mercy Circle model, she said, beaming. How we've built something so personal, so meaningful. I was sitting 3 seats away, helping Harold's mother cut her turkey. That's wonderful, Vivian, Harold's mother said. You should be so proud. Vivian caught my eye across the table. For just a moment, something flickered there. Recognition, maybe? Or warning? Then she looked away and continued her story. The worst part was the photographs. In 2005, I started noticing something strange. Photos I'd taken during my visits with my little disposable camera were appearing in Vivian's materials, but altered. My face removed. Vivian's face added. The first time I saw it, I thought I was losing my mind. It was a photo of me and Ruth Patterson. Ruth was Margaret's neighbor, 92 years old, still full of spark. We'd become close over the years. We'd taken the photo at Ruth's birthday party. I'd baked the cake myself, lemon with cream cheese frosting, her favorite. 3 layers. I'd driven it over in my lap, praying it wouldn't slide. In the photo, Ruth was smiling so wide you could see her dentures. And I was right there beside her, frosting on my fingers. But in Vivian's newsletter, there was Ruth. There was the cake. And there was Vivian, standing where I had stood. The same background, the same light, the same everything, just a different woman. I held the newsletter for a long time. I thought about Della's work. People get away with things all the time. I confronted Vivian at her house. She'd invited me over for tea, which should have been my first warning. Vivian never invited me anywhere. Her living room was immaculate. Fresh flowers on the table. A tea service I'd never seen before, probably expensive. She offered me tea, made small talk about the weather, about Harold, about her plans for the foundation's next gala. When I pulled out the newsletter and showed her the photo, she barely glanced at it. Vivian, that's my photograph. You've edited yourself into my photograph. She set down her teacup. Lorraine, she said, her voice patient, like she was explaining something to a child. The foundation needs professional imagery. Consistent branding. You take lovely pictures, really you do, but they need to represent our organization properly. Our donors expect to see leadership involvement, but you weren't there. I'm there now. She smiled. Besides, what difference does it make? The work gets done either way. The elderly people get visited either way. Does it really matter whose face is in a newsletter that ends up in recycling bins anyway? It matters to me. Well, she picked up her teacup again. Perhaps that's something you should examine. And I understood I wasn't a person to her. I was raw material, a mind she could extract from without consequence. I left without finishing my tea. I told Harold everything that night. We sat on the back porch, looking at the garden. The tomatoes were coming in, red against the green leaves. Life continuing in its ordinary rhythms while something inside me had cracked. He was furious. I'd never seen Harold that angry. The quiet ones, when they finally get angry, burn hotter than anyone. He wanted to confront Vivian, to expose her, to call every board member, every donor, every newspaper that had ever written about her. I want to burn it all down, he said. I want everyone to know what she really is. But I stopped him. What would that accomplish? I asked. She'd deny it. She'd say I was confused, jealous, that I didn't understand how nonprofits work. She'd say I was trying to steal credit for her foundation. She'd turn the family against us. And even if people believed me, the foundation would collapse. All those programs, all those resources gone. Let it collapse. And what about the people it serves? What about you? You're a person too. You mattered too. I know. But Harold, think about it. Mrs. Kowalski gets rides to her doctor through that foundation. Mr. Domingue gets daily check-in calls. Ruth has a whole network of volunteers now, people who started because of the foundation's outreach. If I blow this up, all of that goes away. He was quiet for a long time. The crickets sang. A firefly blinked in the garden. So she just gets away with it, he said finally. For now. Maybe, I don't know. That's not right. I know. But I didn't start visiting people to get credit. I started because it mattered. It still matters. And maybe that has to be enough. It's not enough. I know, but it's what I have. We sat there until the stars came out. He held my hand the whole time. That night, lying in bed, I made myself a promise. I would keep going. I would keep visiting. I would keep doing the work that mattered. And if the truth ever came out on its own, I would let it. I wouldn't force it. I wouldn't fight for it. But if it came, I would be ready. So I kept visiting, and Vivian kept taking credit. And the years kept passing. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. They say time heals all wounds. But I think that's wrong. Time doesn't heal. Time just buries. Buries it so deep you almost forget it's there, until something digs it up again. Miranda grew up in her mother's shadow. Vivian's only daughter was everything. I wasn't educated at the best schools, polished in ways I'd never be, successful by every metric that mattered to her world. She'd followed Vivian into the nonprofit sector. She ran communications for a major health organization. She sat on boards, gave speeches, organized galas of her own, and she adored Vivian. To Miranda, her mother was a saint, a tireless advocate for the elderly, a woman who dedicated her life to service. Miranda had never looked twice at me. I was the aunt by marriage who didn't quite belong, the one without the right credentials. The one who brought practical gifts to Christmas and laughed at the wrong times. The one who wore her mother's pearls instead of her own diamonds. At every family gathering, Miranda would sit at Vivian's right hand. They discuss foundation business in voices loud enough for everyone to hear. Donor strategies, event planning, media opportunities, the latest recognition Vivian had received. I'd help Harold's mother in the kitchen. I'd wash dishes until my hands were wrinkled. I'd smile when anyone looked my way. In 2018, Vivian announced the gala, the 20th anniversary of Mercy Circle Foundation. A lifetime achievement celebration. 300 guests. Black tie. A tribute video. Celebrity appearances. Press coverage. And Miranda would give the keynote speech honoring her mother. The invitation arrived in a heavy cream envelope. Gold letterpress. A ribbon seal. Inside, a card. Please join us to celebrate Vivienne Westbrook's 2 decades of service to our community's most vulnerable. 2 decades of my service, claimed in calligraphy. Harold looked at the invitation for a long time. You don't have to go, he said finally. I know. We could skip it. Say we're sick. Say we have a conflict. We could. But I'd been skipping for 20 years. Skipping confrontation. Skipping credit. Skipping the chance to be seen. I was 71 years old. My knees ached in the morning. My memory for names wasn't what it used to be. But my fire wasn't gone. I was just tired of hiding it. We're going, I said. The gala was scheduled for October. In September, something unexpected happened. Miranda called me. This had never happened before. In 30 years of family connection, Miranda had never dialed my number. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not for anything. I almost didn't recognize the voice at first. Aunt Lorraine, she said, I'm working on the tribute speech for Mom's gala. I'm going through her archives, photos, letters, documentation of her work over the years. Her voice was brisk, professional. This was a task, not a conversation. And I found some boxes she said you donated to the foundation years ago. Old volunteer record? My heart stopped. I'd forgotten about those boxes. When Vivienne first started the foundation, I'd given her everything. My calendars, my notes, my photographs, original photographs, before the editing. I'd handed them over like a fool, trusting her to keep them safe. What did you find? I asked. I'm not sure yet. There's a lot to go through. Papers and photos and what looks like visitor logs going back years. I just wanted to confirm these are from your time volunteering with the foundation? Volunteering with, not volunteering for. She still didn't understand. They're from before the foundation existed, I said. Before? A long pause. I could hear her confusion through the phone. Miranda, have you ever wondered who actually visits the elderly people your mother writes about? Mom does. That's her whole thing. That's what the foundation is built on. That's why she's getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. Ask her when she last made a visit. Ask her for a name, a specific person she's sat with in the last year. The last 5 years? The last 10? Aunt Lorraine, what are you saying? I'm saying look at those photographs carefully. Look at the handwriting on the notes. Look at the dates, the details. Ask yourself why some pictures look different from others. I paused. Ask yourself why you might be looking at the same photo twice, with different people in it. She was silent. I have to go, I said. And I hung up. My hands were shaking. I'd kept quiet for 20 years, and now I'd lit a match and thrown it into a room full of paper. Harold found me on the porch staring at nothing. What happened? I told him. He sat down heavily beside me. So that's it then. It's finally out. Maybe. Or maybe she'll believe whatever Vivienne tells her. Maybe she'll decide I'm the crazy aunt trying to cause trouble. What do you think she'll believe? I thought about Miranda. Her loyalty. Her devotion. Her whole identity built around being Vivienne's daughter. I don't know, I said. I honestly don't know. I didn't hear from Miranda again before the gala. No calls. No emails. No family dinner where she might have mentioned it. The weeks passed in ordinary silence. Harold asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said there was nothing to talk about. Either Miranda would see the truth, or she wouldn't. Either way, I was done hiding. The night of the gala, I wore my mother's pearls. She'd given them to me the year before she passed. They weren't expensive. They weren't impressive by Westbrook standards, but they were mine. Harold wore the suit he'd gotten for our 40th anniversary. Navy blue, conservative, nothing flashy. We looked at ourselves in the mirror together. Two ordinary people about to walk into a room full of extraordinary pretense. Ready? He asked. No, me neither. He took my hand. Let's go anyway. The ballroom was everything Vivian loved. Crystal chandeliers that caught the light and scattered it everywhere like diamonds on fire. A string quartet in the corner, playing something classical and expensive, probably Vivaldi. Waiters in white gloves circulating with champagne and canapes that looked like art and tasted like money. 300 people in glittering formal wear, clutching champagne flutes like weapons. I recognized some faces from newspaper society pages. Business leaders, philanthropists, the kind of people who measured their worth in zeros. And everywhere, Vivian's face. On posters by the entrance, celebrating 20 years of compassion. In the thick, glossy program we were handed at the door, Vivian Westbrook, A Life of Service. On a video loop, playing at the back, testimonials from donors, from board members, from important people saying important things about a woman they'd never seen do a day of real work. I watched myself in one of the video clips. Or rather, I didn't watch myself. I watched my words, my stories coming out of Vivian's mouth. When I first met Margaret, video, Vivian said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, she told me she hadn't had a visitor in 3 months. 3 months without a friendly face. Can you imagine the loneliness? Can you imagine what that does to a person? I'd told Vivian about Margaret over dinner 15 years ago. Vivian had never met Margaret. Vivian didn't know Margaret's last name. Didn't know that Margaret liked Earl Grey with milk. Didn't know that Margaret's husband used to dance with her in their kitchen. Didn't know any of it. We found our seats near the back. Harold had requested them specifically. Easy escape route, he'd said. I'd agreed. A woman at our table introduced herself as a donor. She asked how we knew Vivian. Family, Harold said. Oh, how wonderful. She must be such an inspiration. I took a very long sip of wine. Harold's hand found mine under the table. He squeezed. I squeezed back. We'd gotten good at this silent communication over the years. This one meant, I know, just hold on. The dinner was interminable. Speeches from board members, each trying to outdo the last in their praise. Testimonials from donors, talking about what an inspiration Vivian was. A video tribute that made her look like a cross between Mother Teresa and a movie star. 20 minutes of photographs, all featuring Vivian's face in places I knew she'd never been. I sat through it. I ate food I couldn't taste. I smiled when Harold squeezed my hand. And then the lights dimmed for Miranda's keynote. She walked to the podium in a deep blue dress. Poised. Professional. Everything her mother had raised her to be. The room quieted. 300 people turned their attention to the golden daughter, ready to hear praise. Good evening, Miranda said. Her voice was steady, but I noticed something. Her hands gripped the edges of the podium. Her knuckles were white. Her eyes avoided her mother's table. She looked, I realized, like someone about to jump off a cliff. I was asked to speak tonight about my mother's legacy, about 2 decades of service, about the woman behind Mercy Circle Foundation. She paused. I've spent the last month preparing for this moment, going through archives, reading old records, looking at photographs, dozens of them, hundreds. Another pause. Longer this time. What I found changed everything I thought I knew. The room shifted. A murmur ran through the crowd like wind through leaves. I felt Harold's hand tighten on mine. My mother is many things, Miranda continued. She is elegant. She is well-connected. She is very, very good at fundraising. She took a breath. But she is not the woman who built this foundation's mission. She is not the woman who visited Margaret Patterson every Tuesday for 6 years. She is not the woman who read mystery novels to Della Washington until Della passed peacefully in her sleep. She is not the woman who baked birthday cakes for 90-year-olds who had no one else to remember them. Vivian was rising from her seat. Her face was white. Miranda, that woman, Miranda said, her voice cutting through the room like glass, is in this room tonight. And her name is Lorraine Westbrook. The silence was absolute. 300 people frozen. Champagne glasses halfway to lips. Forks suspended in midair. The string quartet had stopped playing without anyone noticing. I found the original photographs, Miranda continued. Her voice was shaking now, but she didn't stop. The ones before they were altered. I found the handwritten notes in a penmanship that doesn't match my mother's. I found calendars documenting 20 years of visits by someone who was never on the foundation payroll, never credited, never acknowledged. She held up a folder. I found editing software on my mother's computer. I found the original files and the altered files saved side by side. I found drafts of donor letters where she copied someone else's words and changed the pronouns from I to she, and then back to I again. She looked directly at me now. Aunt Lorraine, would you please stand up? I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't work. Harold stood first, pulling me gently to my feet. 300 heads turned. 300 pairs of eyes found me at the back of the room. For 20 years, Miranda said, my mother took credit for your work, your relationships, your compassion. She edited you out of photographs and put herself in. She told your stories as her own. She built her entire reputation, this entire gala, on your invisible labor. Miranda's voice cracked. She was crying now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. And I helped her. I believed her. I looked right past you at every family dinner, every Christmas, every gathering. I dismissed you because my mother taught me that people like you didn't matter. She paused to wipe her eyes. I was wrong. She was wrong. And I am so sorry. Vivian was on her feet now. This is absurd. Miranda, I don't know what Lorraine told you, but, Mom. Miranda's voice was steel. I found the photos. The originals and the edited versions. Same background, same lighting, same cake, same elderly woman smiling, but different person standing next to her. She held up 2 photographs. Even from the back of the room, I recognized them. Ruth's 92nd birthday. The cake I'd baked, the smile I'd worn. In one photo, me. In the other, Vivian. Same everything else. This is the original, Miranda said. And this is what you published. Do you want me to keep going? Because I have about 50 more. The murmuring became a roar. Board members were standing. Donors were pulling out phones. Someone near the front was openly taking video. I watched Vivian's supporters shift in their seats. I watched people I'd never met exchange horrified glances. I watched 20 years of carefully constructed reputation begin to crumble. Martin stood up. Miranda, that's enough. Whatever you think you've found, sit down, Dad. He sat. I'd never heard anyone speak to Martin Westbrook that way. I have one more thing to say, Miranda continued. The board will need to investigate this fully. There will be consequences. She stepped away from the podium. She walked down the center aisle, past tables of stunned guests, past her mother, who stood frozen in shock. She stopped in front of me. And then my sister-in-law's daughter, the niece, who'd never looked twice at me, took my hands in hers. Aunt Lorraine, everything good this foundation has accomplished, every life touched, every lonely person comforted that came from you. Not from galas, or press releases, or networking events. From you showing up again and again, asking nothing in return. Her voice was barely a whisper now. Thank you. Thank you for everything. I don't remember what I said. I think I just nodded. I think there were tears on both our faces. The gala fell apart after that. Vivian tried to salvage something, a speech, an explanation, a declaration that there had been some terrible misunderstanding. There's been a mix-up, she announced, her voice shaking. My daughter is confused. She's under a lot of stress. The records she found were just preliminary drafts, organizational materials. I can explain everything, but nobody was listening. People were already standing, already gathering their coats, already avoiding eye contact with the woman they'd spent the evening celebrating. Some of them stopped to shake my hand on their way out. "I'm so sorry," one woman said. "I had no idea. I didn't know what to say." What was there to say? Most people just avoided eye contact and hurried past. Harold and I slipped out a side door. We sat in our car in the parking garage for a long time, not speaking. The garage was cold and quiet, fluorescent lights humming, our breath visible in the air. Finally, Harold said, 20 years. 20 years! I should have. No. I took his hand. We made the choice we made. Tonight wouldn't have happened if Miranda hadn't found it herself. If we'd accused Vivian, she'd have spun it. But her own daughter, with her own evidence, standing at her own podium. Poetic justice. Something like that. He started the car. "Let's go home." We didn't speak on the drive. But when we got home, Harold opened a bottle of the good wine. "The one we'd been saving for a special occasion? This seems like one," he said. It did! The aftermath unfolded slowly. The board launched an investigation that very week. They hired forensic accountants, digital analysts, independent investigators. They interviewed former staff members, former board members, former donors. They found everything. The altered photos, over 60 of them, spanning 15 years. The plagiarized stories. The financial irregularities where Vivian had claimed travel expenses for visits she never made. Hotel rooms she never stayed in. Mileage for drives she never drove. They found drafts of speeches on her computer. My words, copied verbatim, then tweaked just enough to sound like her. They found thank you cards that had been sent to me, cards from families of people I'd visited that Vivian had intercepted and hidden in a drawer. Cards I'd never seen. Gratitude I'd never received. 3 months later, Vivian resigned. The official statement called it a transition to new leadership in honor of the Foundation's 20th year. Everyone knew what it really meant. The society pages stopped mentioning her. The invitations stopped arriving. The women from her tennis club developed convenient scheduling conflicts. The friends from her book group started meeting without her. Word travels fast in those circles. Faster than truth, usually. But this time, the truth had video. The Foundation rebranded. New name, new logo, new everything. They asked if I'd consider joining the board. I said no. I was 71 years old. My knees still ached in the morning, and I'd earned every ache. I didn't need a title. I didn't need recognition. I just wanted to keep visiting. But I did let them put my name in the newsletter. Just once. A small article about the volunteers who'd served longest. My photograph unedited next to the story. Ruth cut it out and framed it. She put it on her mantle, next to photographs of her late husband. "There," she said, when she showed me. "Now people will know. Vivian and I haven't spoken since the gala. Not a word, not a card, not even a glance at family gatherings, which she stopped attending. Harold talks to her occasionally. Tense, brief conversations about their mother's care. She's in her 90s now, Harold's mother. She lives in a nice assisted living facility with a view of a garden. I visit her every week. I bring her crossword puzzles and photos of our vegetable garden. She holds my hand and calls me her daughter. Vivian does not visit. I've heard through family whispers that Vivian spends most of her time at home now. Martin is still there, though they rarely go out together anymore. She's taken up gardening, someone said, growing tomatoes. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at that. Miranda and I have lunch every month now. She left her prestigious job 6 months after the gala. Too many people knew. Too many whispers in conference rooms. Too many awkward silences when she entered. She could have stayed, could have weathered it, but she didn't want to. I spent my whole career building something on a lie, she told me over salad one day. Even if nobody knew, I knew. I couldn't keep doing it. Now she volunteers at the senior center 3 days a week. Actually volunteers. Showing up, sitting with people, learning their stories. She's not very good at it yet. She talks too fast. She checks her phone. She's still learning how to be present, but she's trying. That counts for something. Last month, she came with me to visit Ruth. Ruth is 97 now. Still sharp, still feisty. Still reading mysteries, though now Miranda reads them to her. Ruth studied Miranda for a long moment when we arrived. Those watery eyes that still saw everything. You're the one who told the truth, Ruth said. Miranda nodded. That took courage, child. More courage than most people have in a lifetime. She reached out and patted Miranda's hand. Your grandmother would have been proud. Miranda's eyes filled with tears. How did you know about my grandmother? Ruth smiled. Your Aunt Lorraine told me. Years ago. She told me about your whole family. She looked at me. She tells me everything. That's what friends do. Harold asked me recently if I'm happy. It's a harder question than it sounds. 20 years of being invisible leaves marks. There are still moments when I walk into a room and expect not to be seen. Still moments when I catch myself making myself small. Still mornings when I look in the mirror and wonder if any of it mattered. But then I think about Della, about what she said about mysteries, about how someone always figures it out. She was wrong about real life, I think now. Sometimes someone does figure it out. Sometimes the truth comes to light. It just takes longer than anyone wants. I'm living well now. I'm being seen. Harold and I still do our crosswords on Sunday mornings. Still split a bottle of wine on Friday nights. Still grow more tomatoes than we know what to do with. And I still visit every week. Different faces now, mostly. Same purpose. Showing up, being present. Remembering that everyone has a story worth hearing. For the first time in 20 years, I'm not invisible. That's something, isn't it? Sometimes the truth teller you've been waiting for is someone you never expected. I wonder if there's someone in your life sitting on a truth that could change everything. Next time, a woman discovers that the child she placed for adoption 40 years ago has been living in the same town the whole time, and someone she trusted knew all along. Come sit on the porch again soon.